CRLPO Infrastructure Summit 2016.
Welcome to the session on transport, and we call this Building an Adaptive, Demand-Supply Optimized and Service-Oriented Public Transport Network. As we all know, our blood circulation, if it stops in our body, you know what will happen to us. Similarly, if transportation is dysfunctional, the city will die. So we are going to learn that. What are the things that we can learn from this eminent panel and the 5 speakers and the panel as to how we can make Colombo or the megapolis alive and make it really vibrant. To start off the session, I would invite the first speaker, Professor Amal Kumarage, Senior Professor from the University of Moratuwa Transport and Logistics Department. He needs no introduction. I'll straight away ask him to take stage. Over to you, Professor.
Good morning to everybody. My task is to brief you or discuss or start the discussion on the viability of transportation planning and how we can mitigate any possible infrastructure investment risks that may arise in the future. Now, Sri Lanka, and particularly Colombo, had one of Asia's best urban transportation systems in the late 1950s and dating well into the 1960s. We had tramcars, trolleybuses, one of the best urban commuter railways, one of the best working bus systems, and we had even rickshaws and taxis and all of that. And incidentally, at that time, Sri Lanka had the second best economy in Asia as well, second only to Japan. But since then, we have lost ground in both. And why I'm saying that is no country can actually develop and maintain an economic momentum unless its transport works equally well. And if we want to climb the ladder in terms of economic prosperity, then getting the transport right is absolutely important. So we need transport not only for the Western province, but for the entire country, and we should not forget that. If we do, in fact, have a big gap between the provinces and Colombo, Colombo will get all kinds of unnecessary pressure where the infrastructure will not be able to keep pace. So therefore, a balanced development is needed. We should not forget the requirements of other urban centers in the country, the interurban transport, and so on. However, there is an absolute urgency to revitalize and reposition the transportation infrastructure and services in the megapolis or the Western province area to align it to the proposed economic development plan. Now, in terms of current issues, particularly this session is looking at public transport, how we can position public transport to achieve this. We have, as everybody would agree, a qualitatively lagging public transport network. However, one must say that particularly during the war years, the public transportation system was under severe pressure, particularly from lack of investment. And I think we must record appreciation to the people who actually kept the public transport system alive and viable, and which still carries 50 to 60% of the people. And compared to many of the public transport systems in our part of the world, we are still providing a fairly decent service. Not only that, we can today talk about improving public transport because the networks are still there, the institutions are still there, and we can easily mobilize them. However, after the war, it was the belief that motorization would be the provision of the transport future. We had large investment in roads and expressways, and people were hopeful that with all the excitement about flyovers, elevated expressways, and one-way systems, etc., that we could build our way out of congestion, as many countries and cities have thought so in the past. However, that was short-lived when people realized that it's not only the first 2-3 deciles of the income, but everybody else also can now own and use a motor vehicle. And now roads are congested, and people now reluctantly talk about public transport future. People still want roads, people still want to drive their vehicles, and I think that's a mindset that needs to change. And as many countries have proven, we have a task ahead to change the mindset of the people that public transport is actually a better form of transport. Now, if you look at measuring success, and I think we need to start talking about measuring transportation projects. Very often, we measure the success of a transport project by the output we see. We build a road, we build an expressway, we build ports, and so on. And people are gullible enough in many parts of the world to think that if you have an output, a physical thing, then you have achieved the desire. No, transport is about outcomes. It's not about building infrastructure, it's about what you provide the people, the mobility. Your trip lengths must decrease, your convenience must increase, and what you want in terms of mobility must be met. Increasingly, people don't care what mode they use. We talk about seamless transport, we talk about integrated transport, and the walls of the technologies are breaking down, particularly thanks to the ICT linkages that are coming. So therefore, we need to position ourselves not talking so much about this technology or that technology, but what contributes to what people want. Secondly, we must have operational success. Not only the revenue, the fare box, but in terms of how many people can afford to use it, how many people will have access to it, and making transportation available to everybody. And this is, to me, the success that we have. It doesn't matter whether you get PPP or government funds, but finally, you need to have that model. And also, we talked about in the previous session, transport is an important catalyst for creating livable environments. And Colombo has potential to be something unique. And transport will either create it or not make it happen. Do we want elevated structures? Do we want public spaces? Cities around the world have made important decisions and then lived to either benefit or suffer by them. And I think that discussion is yet to start. What kind of public transportation structures, transport structures do we want? Now, having reviewed the Megapolis plan, I think it is an exciting plan. It is a plan that hopefully will come to fruition over the years. But as most plans, it needs to have an evolutionary process. No plan is perfect when it starts, particularly one that is 20 years, which is based on technologies that are rapidly changing, social needs, economic needs, even political positions that are invariably going to change over this next 20 years, maybe even in the next 1 or 5 years. So therefore, how robust is this? How solid on a foundation is this? Early decisions have always been important. Later, if you make the wrong decisions, therefore, you may have a lot of problems. One of the big problems that many countries have in transport is this silo-based approach, where we think, okay, this is the technology. And I think we need to break out of that. It's not about LRT or buses or railways. It's about what provides the better connections, the better cost. What can be provided at the time we need it, and so on. So therefore, if we can have, for example, the LRT has been proposed, a modern system which will cost us 5 billion rupees a kilometer for 75 kilometers. That's 400 billion rupees. That's a lot of money. The Megapolis revised plan shows that 7% of the people will use it by 2035, probably about 2% when it starts off. Now, is this the kind of technology we need to kick off with? We have 50% currently on buses. Isn't this the approach we should take? And I think we need to look at the two options and see what is the more pragmatic approach to take. We need to have integrated systems. I hear of expressways, elevated expressways being built, where actually no feasibility had been done, other than for just what goes on top of the expressway. See, a road network is a system. I call it a system of systems. And we need to look at any transport intervention vis-a-vis what happens to the entirety. For example, even if you take any elevated structure, you need another mode to get there. Even with LRT, 60% of the people who will come to LRT will need another access mode. So therefore, we have to look at how the cost and the benefits are integrated. Secondly, we need honest evaluations. And I'd say honest evaluations. I think this kind of ambitious, rapid plan can only be built on facts. It cannot be steamrolled. It cannot be pushed from down. It cannot say we don't want to listen to criticisms, well-meaning criticisms, or diversity in opinions. If we want to go this journey, there must be a willingness to consider all options. For example, one of the problems that we see in infrastructure investment is when baskets of projects are put in and evaluated. You put LRT, elevated roads, buses, trains, and say by 2020, you have this. In there are good eggs and bad eggs. And therefore, technologically what you want gets put in there. No, we need to invest every single mode for its own benefit. We should not be driven by cost. We talk about how much you spend. No, we should be talking about what is the benefit. This is the size of the benefit that this project is going to get, not how much we are going to invest. Finally, we need to have good, transparent financial and procurement models, where the risk is shared. We have often seen in countries where private sector is invited, there is a pressure to put the risk back on the government. We need to have models and institutions, we talked about it earlier, that are able to safeguard the interest of the country while protecting the interest of the investor. We need to have benefits being equally distributed so that no party or no people are marginalized and excluded. Transport around Sri Lanka offers 1 million jobs, and at least 400,000 of that is in this area. And therefore, I think we need to actually be mindful of how it impacts these people. So finally, half a minute more, Lakshman. We have an ambitious plan for the short term. And quoting the report, the feasibility studies are to be completed in 6 months, and commenced in 6 months and completed within years. Why do you want to start studying 7 rapid transit systems? Even the advanced cities and so on have done one at a time and built one at a time. I failed to capture the logic of that. Feasibility study for railway electrification, yes, that was initiated many years ago, and ADB got involved during the 100-day government, and I think that should be promoted. Inland water transport service is very good. The key here is restructuring public bus services. There are about 8,000, we need about 4,500. How do you tackle this? I'm involved in the Sahasara concept, and it can be done, but it needs priority attention. And I think this is what will give us the first stage to actually go in and make a difference, to make Colombo a viable destination by 2020. If we don't get there, I think the future ahead will look bleak. And these are some of the recommendations. I'll leave you for a minute. Thank you very much.
LBR LPO Infrastructure Summit 2016.